President Trump and the Republican Party got a potentially much-needed political gift on Wednesday. Supreme Court Justice Anthony Kennedy told the president he was retiring, saying it was the, quote, highest of honors to serve on the court. The president expressed his support for Kennedy in his Fargo, North Dakota rally Wednesday night.
Justice Anthony Kennedy, a very special guy, also just announced a little while ago his retirement from the United States Supreme Court. Great man. And I'm very honored that he chose to do it during my term in office because he felt confident in me to make the right choice and carry on his great legacy. That's why he did it.
Molly Hooper is a CBSN political contributor and congressional reporter for The Hill, and she joins me now on the phone. Molly, these remarks seem like, in one sense, the president's greatest hits, building the wall, Obamacare is dead. But at the same time, we heard some new themes there about the Supreme Court vacancy, about Justice Kennedy, who's announced his retirement. What stood out to you?
Man, there was a lot of red meat in that rally. And obviously, the Supreme Court justice is a key factor. Keep in mind, he was in North Dakota to support and endorse Kevin Cramer's bid for Senate. He's taking on current Democratic Senator Heidi Heitkamp, who is one of those Democrats who won in a state where Trump actually won the presidential vote. And so, Kevin Cramer's bid was a long time coming. He was one of the first lawmakers to endorse President Trump, or then presidential candidate Trump. And the president really wanted Kevin Cramer to run for this seat against an incumbent that seems to be relatively popular. And when the president spoke about this theme of the Supreme Court, he did so citing Heidi Heitkamp, who may well vote for the next Supreme Court nominee, as she did for Neil Gorsuch. But once she does, then she's going to be voting with, quote unquote, Maxine Waters and Nancy Pelosi. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the things that really stood out, is that, the president pushed this idea that they need more Republicans in the Senate in order to pass more legislation.
But, I wonder, Molly, how do you think that will play? Because Heidi Heitkamp is someone who, as we know, and as you know, has not been afraid to get close to President Trump on various pieces of legislation, for instance.
Exactly, which is why it was kind of remarkable that the president was actually able to convince Kevin Cramer to run for that Senate seat. Kevin Cramer, a current sitting member of the House, probably would have been reelected pretty handily. But now he's taking on Heidi Heitkamp, who has, as you said, has not been afraid to get close to the president. Now, one area where Heidi Heitkamp and Kevin Cramer will distinguish themselves is this idea of tariffs and trade. Mm-hmm. And, in the next month or so, we've been talking to experts. I've been talking to experts, trade experts, who say, the real impact of these tariffs that the president is imposing will hit home, and it will hit farmers very hard, and that's one of the key constituencies in North Dakota. So the president did talk about trade and how great and brilliant it's going to be and beautiful it will be for the farmers, but I don't know if all those farmers necessarily agree, because even though the president did make sure to hit home the point that Canada basically taxes our goods at 100-something%, it doesn't matter, because when it comes down to it, if these farmers are going to be taxed even more by exporting their goods, really, it'll hit them in their pocketbooks, and that'll be a problem.
Well, we also heard President Trump taking a shot at 10-term Democratic Congressman Joe Crowley, who lost his primary last night to 28-year-old Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Here's that clip.
Last night, we had a great evening because we watched that television, and we were winning left and right. They didn't know what the hell happened. And one of my biggest critics, a slovenly man named Joe Crowley, got his ass kicked. By a young woman who had a lot of energy. She had a lot of energy. I guess he didn't see it. They couldn't find him. He spent a lot of money. He actually had a lot of money left over. Everyone's pouring a fortune because they figure. And he was going to take Nancy Pelosi's place. And I was so disappointed because I want to keep Nancy Pelosi right where she is with Maxine Waters.
So, Molly, why is the president, you think, celebrating the victory of a member of the Democratic Socialists of America over a powerful House Democrat?
Well, exactly. And that's what I mean when I was saying red meat. I mean, it's not every day that you hear the president use those certain words, at a rally in North Dakota for a Republican Senate candidate. And that's the whole issue. This woman she's a millennial, she's young, but more importantly, she was a huge supporter of Bernie Sanders, and she took out a Democratic establishment figure. And so if there is a blue wave, and you look at the primary wins by certain Democrats in these Democratic majority seats, like Joe Crowley, I don't think you're going to see a lot of deals getting cut with those individuals. And the president does want to cut deals. Ultimately, what he wants to do is he wants to get deals done. And it seems very difficult to think that there will be a lot of cooperation between those elements of the party. Keep in mind, and this is the other thing kind of went, I don't know if I would say unnoticed, but the president also touted the victory of Dan Donovan, a Republican who was running against Michael Grimm, former Representative Michael Grimm, who actually went to prison and, was running again for his old seat, who was endorsed by Steve Bannon. And that was kind of interesting, the fact that when the president says, we're kicking their tails, to paraphrase, left and right, the right he meant was Michael Grimm, a.k.a. Steve Bannon. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Even though he didn't mention Bannon's name, Bannon definitely took a hit last night.
I want to ask you, Molly, about a bit of news that's coming in from our chief White House correspondent, Major Garrett, on another topic here. President Trump likely to name ex-Fox News executive White House communications director. And as I'm reading from his story here, Major is reporting that the president is likely to name Bill Shine to be his new communications director, a position left open when Hope Hicks left the White House. Shine and Mr. Trump met Wednesday to finalize the deal. Mr. Trump has mulled hiring Shine for the job for months. But the piece goes on to talk about this. What do you think, if in fact this is likely to pan out, that the president goes ahead and names Bill Shine as his communications director for the White House? The major challenge for someone in that position will be, given what we know about the president's own communicating style.
Sorry, exactly. It seems like for the past few months, the president's been his own chief of staff, communications director, and spokesman. And so it will be a challenge. But keep in mind, Bill Shine was very close with Sean Hannity. And Sean Hannity was not very happy when Bill Shine did leave Fox News Channel. And so Sean Hannity is one of the president's go-to calls. If you listen to Hannity speak, and you hear his radio show, Sean Hannity has a lot of insight into what the president's thinking, and I have a feeling that he had a hand. And again, I cannot base this on fact, but my gut instinct and my sense is that Sean Hannity probably was instrumental in getting Bill Shine this appointment. And the White House communications director, if you talk to former communications directors for various high-ranking members of Congress, leadership, folks, former speakers and whatnot, they all say that the position has changed so much, given that the president is his own spokesman and does make a lot of these decisions on his own. However, when it comes to things like, which interviews to do with which networks, how it will be covered, that does go to the White House communications director. And what I noticed tonight about the coverage of the president's speech, I was watching it on various networks. Several didn't cover it, but Fox News Channel had a lot of cutaways of the crowds. I didn't see that on other channels. So I think that Bill Shine being hired would probably fit in line with what the Trump administration wants to, convey to their audience.
And on that note, Major's reporting goes on to say that the president sees Shine as someone who can bring some organization and management to the communications team and who knows TV at the highest level in terms of talent and production, another priority for Mr. Trump. All right, Molly Hooper, thank you so much for weighing in for us. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And Weijia Jiang joins us now from Fargo, North Dakota, where the president delivered his speech. Weijia, let me ask you about President Trump, first of all, expressing his desire to pick a Supreme Court justice who is going to serve for 40 to 45 years. How did the crowd receive his comments about the Supreme Court?
Well, as expected, he made that new vacancy front and center of this entire rally. He used it during his stumping for the Republican nominee for the Senate seat, which was a main reason why he is here tonight. And the crowd reacted as expected. It was a major victory when President Trump selected Justice Neil Gorsuch, and he was confirmed. And now he gets to do it again. And the crowd is very aware of that because the president laid out exactly what that means and what issues are at stake. And so he brought up abortion, he brought up immigration, he brought up, issues that the justices will ultimately review again, and why it's so important not only that he maintains this control and is able to choose someone who has a lifespan of 40 to 45 years on the court, but also why it's important for the midterm elections coming up. And he used this as a rallying cry for people to vote for Congressman Kevin Cramer, who again is going after that Senate seat against Democrat Heidi Heitkamp. And he said Heitkamp will vote against any of his picks for the Supreme Court and warned it is extremely important for them to vote for Cramer. And by the way, it's interesting here because Cramer is very well known. He already represents this state. North Dakota is one of a handful of states that is so small. There's only one seat in the House, and so Cramer, just like Heitkamp, represents the entire state. But you're right, Elaine. Certainly, the Supreme Court news of the day was the big headline of this rally.
Well, the president also brought up the issue of tariffs, Weijia. Let's play a clip.
We're also fixing the disastrous trade deals that have plundered our wealth, gutted our communities, undermined our great farmers, taken our jobs. We are going to make trade fair and reciprocal. Reciprocal, you know what that is? They do it to us, we do it to them. And we are placing very big tariffs on some of these countries because they have tariffs on us.
All right, so Weijia, what is the economic reality of tariffs in North Dakota?
Well, President Trump is right when he says when they do it to us, we do it to them. What he failed to mention is all the promises of retaliation, again, as a response to these new U.S. tariffs. The EU, Canada, Mexico, China have all vowed to slap retaliatory tariffs on U.S. exports, and that is a big concern here in North Dakota, which is a soybean capital of the country, and the state's crops, the majority of them, go to China. And so there is a possibility that these farmers here could be crippled whenever China, as you know, in response to these U.S. tariffs, places tariffs of their own on U.S. exports. And that is something that farmers are very aware of, but they, I think, have faith in the president that he will be able to negotiate some sort of deal and perhaps avoid those, which are set to go into place, by the way, on July 6th. But the reality is the president went hard on the fact that he is trying to level the playing field with these new tariffs on imports. But we have to remember that all of those countries impacted have promised to do the same back. And that's something that he didn't really mention because it's a sensitive subject here with such a massive farming community in North Dakota.
Yeah, and the president basically at one point denying that he started a trade war. He said, quote, "It's already happened." Weijia Jiang in Fargo, North Dakota for us. Weijia, thanks very much.